Izzy at Minerva. We are continuing our pattern drafting series looking at cuffs and how to create and design different types of cuffs for our sleeves today. And we're going to be looking at how to create a piped cuff today. I'll be talking you step by step how to do that in today's tutorial. You're going to need your standard pattern drafting tools, which are listed right next to me here. You're going to need your own sleeve block. The one that you can see on the screen in front of you is mine, and yours will look slightly different than that, and that's absolutely fine. Don't forget that for this video, you're also going to need some piping because we're creating a piped cuff. So you can either buy this from a shop or you can make your own. If you're not sure how to draft your own sleeve block, just refer back to video 69, where I talk you through how to do that using your own body measurements. As ever, we love to hear from our maker community, so please do put your comments below the video. We'd love to hear back from you all, and also to see the lovely creations you're making as part of this series. So do get involved, we'd love to hear from you. Today I am wearing the Sagebrush top, which is a beautiful top designed by Friday Pattern Company. It's a really popular top. We absolutely love it, and we'll tag it below the video so that you can purchase your own copy if you'd like to from our Minerva website. So in front of us here we've got our standard sleeve block. The first thing I want to do is to remove the width of the cuff at the bottom down here. I want my cuff to be quite dramatic, so I'm going to do a 9 centimetre wide cuff. So draw a line on your sleeve which is 9 centimetres offset from the wrist. Wonderful, we're going to cut those two sections apart now. At this point, that's all we're going to do to the sleeve. We're going to be just gathering the sleeve into the cuff in a minute, but let's remove that and let's focus on the cuff. Now, we're not going to be creating a formal shirt cuff. If you want to know how to do that, refer back to video 81, where I show you how to do that with the placket and everything. In this video, we just want a sleeve cuff that we can just slip on, but still has quite a nice dramatic little effect on the cuff. So grab your tape measure and then just loop it up into a nice little curve and pop your wrist through that curve. Now, what I want you to do is find out what the tightest circumference of your tape measure you can achieve and still be able to get your hand through. So for everyone, that'll be something different. For me, I'm going to stick that at 21 centimetres. So working with that measurement, we are going to reduce the width of that cuff to that measurement. So I'm going to mark a point that is 21 centimetres along from the base of the cuff, and then I'm just going to square that up to the top of the cuff, creating a rectangle that is 21 centimetres long. Perfect. Let's cut out the excess of that cuff now. What I want to create now is I want to create a sort of curved end to my cuff. So I want it to just sort of curve in really nicely, a bit like a sort of tulip petal leaf. So I'm just going to use my ruler to find a nice curve to soften off this top bit up here, and then just remove the excess. And then literally just going to lift that pattern piece up, fold it over exactly down the centre line, and just mark that same curve on the other side so that I can then cut it out. So basically that's all that we need to do in order to create this piped cuff. So let's go grab some tracing paper, pop it over our pattern pieces and create our pattern pieces. Add your 1.5 centimetre seam allowance to the top of your cuff. Add a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance all the way around the cuff pattern piece. Now, it doesn't matter if you've got lines that kind of stick out like that, because we're going to be cutting those out anyway. It's more important that our lines are crossing over each other so we get a nice neat finish to them. Our grain line is going to follow the wrist and be perpendicular to the base of the cuff. This is the piped cuff and it's the cuff pattern piece, and we're going to cut 4 of these. Now, it might be helpful, and you might want to say that you want to add some interfacing, so cut 2 pieces of interfacing so that you can interface either the inside or the outside layer depending on the aesthetic of the cuff that you want to create. Because we're just looking at pattern drafting, I'm not going to do that step today. Let's move on to our sleeve pattern piece, and we're just going to add our standard 1.5 centimetre seam allowance all the way around the sleeve. Add in your notches. to the top of the sleeve head. The grain line follows the base of the sleeve. Piped cuff sleeve cut 2. Now at this point, at the base of the sleeve, I want you just to mark a little notch that is 1.5 centimetres offset from the side seam, and another one at this point here. I'm then just going to annotate that to say that this is where we're going to gather the sleeve. So this sleeve pattern piece is a little bit wider than our cuff, so we're just going to gather that until it fits into the cuff. It's not massively different, but it will just need just a little bit of easing and a little bit of gather to get in there. You could, if you wanted to, also create a nice little pleat in your cuff as well. Let's cut out those pattern pieces now. Now then, just as I was cutting out the pattern pieces, I realised I've forgotten to add one notch. So let's go back to the pattern pieces and add that now. So what we want to do is to measure the width from this notch to that notch there. For me, it's 26. So tap whatever that length is between those two notches into your calculator and divide it by 4. And whatever that distance is, we want to mark a notch from this notch here, that is that distance along the back of the sleeve here. Now that notch there is effectively where we want the opening of our cuff to sit when we attach the cuff onto the sleeve. Okay, so we've got 2 cuff pieces and the right side's facing up. What we want to do now is to attach the piping to one of the cuff pattern pieces. It's basically going to be attached all the way around like that. This one is then going to sandwich on top of it, and then when you fold it out like that, you're going to see the piping all the way around the perimeter. So let's pop one piece to the side. And then we're going to grab this piece of piping, and what we want it to be is we want it to be so that the stitch line of the piping, just where the edge of the roll of the piping is 1.5 centimetres from the raw edge. Now, you may find it helpful using a fabric pen or some chalk, just very simply to mark a 1.5 centimetre offset around the raw edge so that you clearly know and you've got a nice guide for where you want to be pinning your piping. So then let's grab our pins, and I'm just going to let the piping overhang over the edge of the fabric down at the bottom down here just a little bit. And we're lining up the stitches with the 1.5 centimetre seam allowance, so that the cord inside the piping is just going to sit just over the 1.5 centimetre seam allowance. Now I'm just adding a lot of pins so that I've got a lot of nice accuracy as I sew it. This is one of the one of the sewing details where accuracy really does matter, because you want the piping to be exactly the same width when it sticks out of the cuff all the way around the whole of the cuff. Let's sew that in place now using a basting stitch to go all the way around. What I would recommend is that you use a nice little zipper foot so that you can get the coil of the piping just nicely tucked underneath the gap of the zipper foot where the zipper teeth would normally go. So let's pop that foot into the machine, and then let's just start to sew. Lovely, so that's just basted in place now. And what we're going to do next is we are going to remove some of the cord from 1.5 centimetres offset from the raw edge down here. So I'm just going to mark a point using my fabric pen on either side of the cord where that 1.5 centimetre offset will be. Okay, so working on this side down here, I'm just going to trim into that cord channel so that I can pull out the cord nice and easily. Perfect. I'm then going to pull it out by that 1.5 centimetres, and then just trim it off. When I tuck that back in, you can see it's going to sit much flatter now when we sew it. Let's just do the same for the other side. Cut into that channel a little bit. Then just pull it out. Trim off 1.5 centimetres and then just pull the cord back in place. Excellent. So once you've sorted out the flatness of the cord down at the base of the seam allowance, grab your other cuff piece and with right sides together, sandwich the piping in between the two. And then just pin it in place all the way around the raw edge. Now, you may find it easier to sew it with this side facing up because you can see your previous stitch line, or you may just be able to sort of feel where the cord is and make sure that you're stitching as close to the cord as possible. Either way, what we're going to do now is to sew both pieces of cuff together, and we're going to stitch it as close as we can to the edge of the cord, sandwiching the cord between the two cuff pattern pieces. Now once you've done that once, just turn it the right side out and just sort of check how it's all looking, if it's looking how you want it to. You may just need to go around again just to get that a bit neater or a bit more even. I don't know if you can see on mine, but it seems like this bit over here is much chunkier than that bit. So I'm just going to go back and just rectify that. Then just snip around the corners to release the tension when we turn it right side out. Great. Turn it the right side out and then press it in place so that it's all nice and even. Start off by sewing your sleeve pattern piece together along the inside edge as shown here. What we want to be doing is to be attaching the cuff then to the sleeve pattern piece, but do you remember that our sleeve circumference is too big to fit the cuff currently. It's too, if I fold that in half like that, you can see that much is excess. And the most important thing to note is that we're going to start where our notch is here at that point, start there, work our way round. So let's run 2 lines of gathering stitches. The first one will be 5 millimeters offset from the raw edge, and the second line of stitches will be 1 centimeter offset from the raw edge. The stitch length will be 5 millimeters long for both of them, and we're going to reinforce the stitches at the beginning but then leave a nice long thread at the end that we can pull when we're going to gather our stitches. So that's our first one, and then we're going to run our second line of stitches. And there's our second one. So we've got 2 nice long runs of stitches. Okay, so you'll see that we've got 2 lines of thread on the underside of the sleeve and 2 on the other side. So tie together the 2 bobbin threads and tie together the corresponding 2 reel threads, just so those don't get confused later. Turn the sleeve right side facing out. Now then, working from the notch here, we basically want to attach the cuff into the sleeve here. So we're going to start just by pinning one side in place. Wrap the cuff all the way around the sleeve and bring it so that the other side of the cuff meets and lines up with the notch on this side too. Now I think it's quite nice if we just overlap the piping just a little bit at the seam allowance, just to create a really nice neat finish there. So just pin that in place. And then what we want to do is to reduce the sleeve circumference on the inside so that it matches the shorter circumference of the cuff. So just pull on those little gathering stitches. It's not a huge amount to gather, but it's just a little bit to bring in. Great. Once you're happy that the circumference is correct, just tie off and put a knot as close as you can to your fabric down at the bottom there, and then just evenly distribute those little gathers all the way around your sleeve. Once you're happy with that, then just pin it in place. all the way around. Great, and then just sew that in place. Lovely. So at this point you may well want to just finish off the raw edge using your preferred method. And then let's go and take a look at it. And so here we have it. A really beautiful cuff, looking just a really nice little detail there, fits our arm really beautifully. And on the other side we've got a lovely little finish here that looks really good, doesn't it? Thank you so much for joining me this week as we've looked at how to draft a piped cuff. It's been lots of fun. Next week we will continue our cuff detail by looking at an elasticated cuff finish. As ever, if you've got any comments, feel free to leave them below the video. We always love to hear from our maker community here at Minerva. So thank you for joining me today. I'll see you next week.